Hey there folks, it's me TheTacticalBrit, and today we're going to be talking about mastering the entire anti-tank class in Hell Let Loose. And in this video today, I'm going to be diving into all the things I know about anti-tanking and how that can help you in game. The anti-tank, in my opinion, is one of the most effective classes in the game. A single tank in Hell Let Loose is capable of wreaking pure destruction and havoc on any given objective, and can change the tide of any given battle. So it's really important if you're playing anti-tank that you're effective at this role and can deal with these very efficiently. If you've watched any of my live streams, you'll probably see that I'm capable of taking out anywhere between 4 to 6 tanks a game on a good day, normally 2 to 4 on a bad day. And today I'm going to reveal all the secrets I use and all the things that you could possibly use and bring into your gameplay to make yourself so much better at the anti-tank class. For me, anti-tanking is achieved by 3 things: patience, the ability to flank, and execution. Once you have those 3 things in the bag, and some of the other points we'll be talking about in this video, you can have a hugely dominating presence on any given game of Hell Let Loose. I think if you've watched the streams again, like I mentioned, sometimes we manage to get things like 400 to 500 combat effectiveness, which is higher than entire squads in the game, purely because we're taking out multiple vehicles and sometimes even spawns as well. So the first point, flanking. Flanking is hugely important in Hell Let Loose, especially if you're using the anti-tank role. Ultimately, you want to put as much distance as humanly possible between yourself, the tank, and numerous infantry. The big thing I'd say here is that you want to avoid line of sight. Most people in this game and in Hell Let Loose will either look directly at the objective or look directly at the attacking objective or look towards gunfire. And ultimately, you should think of a tank much like you would think of a sniper. A sniper is always looking to get the best vantage point on an objective, be that in an open field, anywhere they can possibly muster that will get them multiple kills. Tanks are very much the same, except they don't have the vulnerability a sniper does. So you should expect tanks to get into those crucial line of sight positions that can ultimately destroy and devastate entire objectives. When it comes to flanking, you should take the utmost time. You should take as much time as humanly possible, because at the end of the day, the tank you take out will be very much worth the weight of getting there in the first place. You shouldn't rush directly towards tanks, and you should utterly, completely avoid their main direct line of sight as much as you humanly can. So let me spill my knowledge when it comes to this. The first thing is I always look for main roads, because in Hell Let Loose, vehicles get stuck very easily, so if you're on a map that has, iffy terrain, most of them are going to use the main roads until they reach open fields. The second thing is that I take a very long time to do these things. I will flank as far around as humanly possible, often avoiding infantry engagements altogether. Simply put, it being that I don't want to attract any attention to me, and I want to slip between the enemy line before I can get into position to ambush numerous tanks. I don't want enemies, on my tail. I don't want enemies looking in my direction at all. So use every single dip, dive, defilade, bush line, and everything in between as far away from the action as humanly possible. Once you're behind the enemy line successfully, then you can start thinking about funneling towards the objective. And by objective, I mean both the attacking and or defending objective itself, and the most likely positioning for those tanks, be it something that's already been spotted, or just common sense. Tanks are looking for those crucial positions to take out infantry, and it's pretty obvious where they're going to be. They're going to be looking for that great line of sight, so look for that line of sight. Look for where a tank would most likely want to be, and chances are there's going to be one there. And I can't stress this more than anything. Have patience. The more you rush a tank engagement, the more likely you will fail. Take your time to get around the enemy line, take your time to get into the right position, and take your time to execute your tank shots. Get as close as humanly possible, because the closer you are, the lower the failure rate. And of course, you need at least 2 tank shells in the rear of any single tank in order to destroy them, unless they're a light variant, and in which case, you can likely hit it in the side or the rear and take it out in a single shot with a bazooka or a Panzerschreck. My general rule of thumb here is that if you're not behind a tank, you're doing it wrong, because trying to hit a tank from the front or the side is honestly just an exercise in uselessness. You won't be able to destroy them whatsoever. And the biggest vulnerability of any armored vehicle, be it a Sherman, a Panzer, a Tiger tank, is the engine. So the second you're behind a tank, it will only take 2 rockets from a bazooka or a Panzerschreck to destroy that tank, provided you hit the engine directly. Avoid deflecting angles, they can deflect shells as well. And most importantly, make sure you close the distance down as much as humanly possible. The closer you are to a tank, the shorter its line of sight is when it comes to you. For example, if I'm right behind a tank and I hit it in the engine, the second it starts turning, all I have to do is run to the left or right, because ultimately I'm not in the distance, and its cone of vision is incredibly limited to what's directly in front of it, and expands the further I am away from the tank. So ultimately, the closer you are, the more likely you'll have some level of success. Execution is hugely important in this, and the closer you are, the better you'll be, but ultimately, it's going to take time for you to learn. It's going to take time for you to learn how to handle your individual rocket launchers, and the thing I'd say really is that take the distance you think you need to hit the tank from and double it. So whenever you see me aiming at a tank, I go, that's a little bit low, I can aim up a bit. You'd rather be too high than too low. If a missile lands short, then, you're screwed. If the missile hits the back top of a tank, at least you've done something and you have a real good approximation of range. I typically recommend if you do have to go for a long shot on a tank, the bazooka class is fantastic for this because you have one round where you can range and probe the approximate distance, so go for your best bet. And if you're wrong, use the other 3 rounds to definitely hit the target and try and close down that distance as much as you can. It should be noted that the Panzerschreck has a much higher drop than the bazooka, and the bazooka can sometimes take more shots to destroy a tank because it's a lighter variant of anti-tank. But at the end of the day, if you hit 2 shells in the back, it doesn't matter what you're using, they will explode. What other pro tips do I have, I guess? Well, the first one is always run with your rifle out. I hate seeing this and I see it far too often. Unless you know that you have friendlies covering your location, you should always have your gun out. You should always be actively ready to take on infantry that may be in or around a tank. You need to remember that most people in the game are going to see a tank as a source of defense or a source of cover or a source of some kind of strength that they can use to push to an objective. So chances are, if you see a tank, there's going to be a lot of infantry around it. And if you don't see any infantry around it, keep your gun out anyway. There's always a chance there's some guy lurking in a bush or some guy nearby that's going to try and bother you. And like I say, the longer you take to get into a flanking position and the longer you take to get around the enemies, chances are the less likely you will run into enemy infantry, which is hugely important for the success of destroying various tanks. Once you start feeling competent with this thing, there are a couple of other things I think I should highly recommend here. Firstly, as somebody who's getting behind enemy lines, once you've dealt with at least one tank, you have the opportunity to really help your teammates by destroying garrisons and destroying outposts simply by just flanking into them from where you see them spawning. If you get behind the enemy line, which you need to do to get behind a tank, then chances are you're going to be able to see where the enemies are coming from, or have a rough idea in the first place anyway, and that means you should be able to get into positions to take care of them, or at least destroy some of the spawns. Every single spawn you take out as an anti-tank, bearing in mind of course your tank is the first priority, is a bonus point. I've had some games where I've gotten as high as 400 combat effectiveness because I've taken out 2 or 3 garrisons and an outpost or 2 in the process of flanking enemy tanks, and that can be a hugely prized asset. Secondly, when the going gets tough, you have the ability to dig in, you have the ability to sit tight. If you can't flank a tank, which does happen on some of the more invasion-based modes like offensive, you have the ability to build the anti-tank guns. You can build a pack cannon, and you can dig those things into great positions in order to take out multiple tanks. I had a game earlier today, in fact, where I took out 3 or 4 different tanks simply from just barraging the main road and knowing that they would come from them. The objective itself, it was impossible to work around the back of the tank, so I simply just dug in as best as I could. If you can have a rifleman follow you, I highly recommend this as well, because, 8 shots is better than 4, and 4 shots is better than 2. Every time you have the ability to rearm, you have more capacity to take out multiple vehicles. I'd also like to stress that try and help your own tanks in the field as much as you can. Chances are they're looking for enemy vehicles too, and if you can nail the extra shot that will make the difference in any given engagement they're in, they'll thank you eternally for it, and chances are you'll be able to protect them from some layers of infantry too. Now, I'm sure a couple of you guys have come into this wondering when I talk about ranging your shots and when I talk about, where you should aim. Well, the chances are you just need to aim for the engine because anywhere else is a waste of time. But the major thing I would say is that you have to learn this yourself. Ranging and hitting targets at range is something you learn yourself, but I have some suggestions. Like I mentioned before, always aim for double the height you think something is going to be at. And remember that bazookas travel a lot faster across distance than something like a Panzerschreck. But also look for landmarks as well. Landmarks are a great way of giving you an indication of the distance you're aiming towards, or a rough approximation, and if you're used to playing this game for long periods of time, you'll probably learn how to range things quite easily. The only other final point I have really is that if you're in a situation where you're definitely gonna die, or you know that the tank is gonna drive fast away from you way before you can land the shot necessary, take your chances. Take your chances with a shot at distance, or with a shot whilst the tank is moving. I always do this in games. I know if a tank is leaving, it's better that he's partially damaged or maybe a little bit hit than not damaged at all. And that's exactly what you need to aim to do. If something's gonna leave, or if you know you're gonna die, or if he's facing you head on and you know the front armor's not really gonna be able to let you do any real damage, but you know he's gonna nail you or you can't flank around him, just fire everything you've got. You know, most success in terms of anti-tanking is getting into the right position and being able to take a tank out from behind. The other layers of success come from the ability to just go, do you know what, screw it, I'm going to test my luck here and we'll see how it goes. And like I say, a damaged tank is better than no damage at all. Anywho folks, that's it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button if this helped you, and remember, we stream 5 to 6 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 PM UK time. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you again in the next Hell Let Loose video.